enjoy speaking to Congressman Byron Donalds. I think he's one of the more interesting guys in Washington, and I think he's a fighter, but also a thoughtful guy, works hard, and is a cool background. So his take on everything is interesting, whether you agree or not. Let's get a few of them. Here he is. Congressman, thanks for coming back.
It's good to be with you. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Do you want to start with your day job, or do you want to talk 2024 first? I'll leave it up to you.
I'm flexible. We can do day job and extracurriculars.
Okay, good. Okay, so first of all, I want to talk about House Oversight Committee looking to hold FBI Director Christopher Wray in contempt. A lot of rumors swirling around revolving whistleblowers, or at least a whistleblower who could apparently have the goods on Joe Biden and the Biden family and the way they've kind of sold the country for their own profit. How optimistic are you that we're going to really see some movement here? Because this has been a big frustration, particularly for people like me and conservative media and talk radio that we've watched for years and years and years, watching the Bidens kind of get the best of us, and then nothing's ever done. Is this the moment, or is this another head fake?
No, I actually believe that this is the time where we're going to really start to tie these things together. One thing that's very clear from all the information that we've looked at is that Joe Biden and his family are getting money from foreign countries. And so obviously we know at a minimum that's highly unethical. I personally believe it's corruption. The way they've set this up is basically a web of companies to conceal all this. And so where we're at right now with this FBI document is it's been reviewed by Chairman Comer and the ranking member on the committee. From my understanding, I haven't seen the document yet, but from my understanding, it's very detailed as to the facts of Joe Biden knowingly being involved in this scheme of getting money. Some people might say it's akin to bribery in order for action, but now you have to be able to really display that to the American people. I think that we're actually there. The biggest question and the biggest issue is we know the large media is just going to ignore it. All they want to see at this point, they've raised the bar to this point of, well, is anybody bringing criminal charges? If there's no criminal charges, then their view is there's nothing to see here. I think that's just really ridiculous. What we're talking about is a president and his family who are getting money from overseas. And the biggest question is, what was the payback for all this money? People just don't give you money out of the goodness of their heart. That's typically not how it works.
Yeah, and I think this is really an important point, because I think the pattern with the Bidens, and I figure this will be, at least this is my expectation, is that what they are savvy at is figuring out legal corruption, ways to bilk the system that is on the books now as legal. And we need to identify first how they're doing it, and then we can focus on fixing the laws to make sure it's not legal anymore. So it seems like a two-step process. So we can't just punch out after the first step.
Agreed. And I think this is the key point. The press, what only thing they care about now, and they're choosing to do this, but they choose to do it with Joe Biden and with the Biden family is, is anybody bringing charges? No? Well, then there's nothing to see here. And that's
right.
Just flat out wrong, because we know we have a president who's making major decisions on an international level and, frankly, with our own economy. The entire Green New Deal solar panel agenda, that's one of them, where we
Sure.
know that those materials, they're not made in America. This stuff comes from China.
Yes.
But if the family's taking money from China and the president's putting an agenda that promotes Chinese influence in our economy, is that in the best interest of the American people? The answer is no. But the media does not want to ask those questions, because they know once they start asking, there's no answers from this White House. There's definitely no answers from Joe Biden. And it undermines the agenda that, the hard left and the media want to see in this country.
Yeah, and so you guys on the committee, it seems like there's a lot of potential here. Comer has put out that he believes that the FBI has confirmed the existence of a file that allegedly links Joe Biden to a $5 million bribery scheme. I'll tell you, Congressman, with my audience, you put out headlines like this, and this gets people highly excited. And one of the things that's an interesting media strategy here is that if we don't see this, my audience is going to be let down. because there's a lot of hype now, and you guys are promising a lot of stuff at this point. And I'm not asking you to evaluate the tactic there, but there's a lot of media hype going on that we're getting our hopes up pretty high.
Well, look, I talked with the chairman yesterday, Chairman Comer. He relayed, as long as the staff that was there, exactly what was in the document. And from their view, there's no doubt about it that Joe Biden was involved in this bribery scheme, and that he knows full well what his brother and his son have been doing. I think that's very easy for us to be able to present and to document. But the issue we're going to have, and I just want to be very clear on this, is the Democrats are going to dissemble. The media is going to ignore. And I think that where conservatives and Republicans get upset, and rightfully so, is, in my view, we already have smoking guns on this family. But we have large parts of our media that just ignore it. So the viewpoint, if from an activist or somebody fully engaged in politics, is, you guys on Capitol Hill aren't doing enough to quote unquote get Joe Biden. Like, we're providing the information, but it's similar to like the tree falling in the forest. If the media chooses to ignore it, does it really make a sound? And that's what's happening right now. They're just choosing to ignore it. If the Democrats had this level of information on Donald Trump or Mitt Romney or George W. Bush or Ron DeSantis or whoever, they will be wall-to-wall coverage with this stuff. It would be nonstop, because the desired impact is politics and to undermine Republican politics. And this is what their game plan is going to be. They're going to try to ignore this as much as we can. But we've really provided a lot of information already demonstrating how much scandal is surrounding this president.
Yeah, and one thing that's noteworthy here is there's two potential issues. The first one is there a potential to have a chance to see some sort of an indictment or anything like that, which of course would be ideal. But there's also the court of public opinion matters here.
Merrick Garland as Attorney General? Yeah, okay. I'm not even going to try to hold my breath on that.
Sure, but my point is that even if that's not in the offing, I mean, the court of public opinion is going to assemble in about less than a year and a half, and they're going to vote on this guy again. And it would be nice to have a full accounting of what's gone on before and let the people decide, because we're already seeing the polls that half the country thinks he's corrupt, and I think that is an amazing thing for a president that half the country views him as the compromised goods.
Right. And look, I think that's where this stuff is really going to take hold, because I'm going to tell you right now, I have little faith in the Department of Justice about this. They've been investigating, this U.S. attorney in Delaware has been investigating Hunter Biden for like 3 years now. 3 years of this stuff.
Right.
And everything I've read, it's like, oh, okay, well, what's the holdup? And so my view is that the investigation is a painstaking investigation to make sure that they uncover all the things that are going on, to basically just dribble out a long investigation that ends up going nowhere, as opposed to getting down to brass tacks and moving on. And then I think that what people are really getting frustrated about, and I think this is even more past Republicans at this point, is that it's clear that you have a double standard when it comes to the criminalization of politics, because the same Department of Justice has no problem bringing charges as quickly as they possibly can against President Trump for stuff that is foolish, like is really just foolish at this point. But they have no problems doing that. But when it comes to this stuff with the Biden family, everything is a slow walk. And by the way, this is not just the Bidens. It's the same thing with the Clintons. Slow-walked investigations. Somebody comes out and says, you know what, maybe we're just not going to do anything here. And then everybody says, oh, well, she was never charged, so what's the problem? And that's what the media does. And I think that's what's pissing off Americans, because they know that if they were in the crosshairs of these investigations, there would be no mercy for them.
It feels like the main thing that could solve this is there's no disclosure requirements for a family member of the president to disclose when they're making money, and it's clearly based off of their connection to the president. You have to disclose things if you're a lobbyist. You do not have to disclose things if you're a consultant. There's all these loopholes that can be found. And this seems to be the main one to me, is that if you're Frank Biden, or if you're Jim Biden, or if you're Hunter Biden, you can cut a deal with whoever you want because your name is Biden, and they've admitted to this. And no one knows unless some really serious reporting or investigation takes place. It should be automatic, just like it is when you're a lobbyist and you're making money lobbying for some foreign entity, for example.
No, I agree with you. I definitely think that with especially with family members, that stuff should have to be disclosed and disclosed immediately and ahead of time, frankly. I think that that's the way you deal with it, so at least people can go in with their eyes wide open. But the subterfuge that was pulled on the American people was that you had elements of our government, you had members of the current administration who were on the political side of the campaign for Joe Biden, all colluded with the media to suppress the information that Hunter Biden and Jim Biden were cutting deals all over the globe and that Joe Biden was getting a cut. I think that if the American people knew that, it would have been a different decision made in 2020, and the country would be in a far different place because some of the totally insane policies would have never seen the light of day. And we have, unfortunately, in our country, we do have a complicit media who does not care about the actual information that would matter to the American people. All they care about is their own clickbait, their own ratings, and the stuff that they think is important at their cocktail parties that nobody else cares about.
Congressman Byron Donalds is with me, Republican from Florida. Congressman, it seems very past tense already, but I do want to get your take on the debt ceiling debate because it was an interesting one where even the Freedom Caucus side seemed to be pretty divided on it. It seems like this is one where these debates, I've been in this, I've been a part of these debates for long enough to know that there's generally no winners if you're a Republican and you're debating the debt ceiling. You're only choosing between bad solutions to this one. You didn't like the deal. Why not? And how bad do you think it'll get?
Well, I didn't like the deal because at the end of the day, we're raising $4 trillion for $12 billion in cuts. And I know that, some of my colleagues are saying that, well, it cuts $2.1 trillion, but over, I think it's a 6 or 8 year window. But that's only if you keep the budget caps in place. After the first 2 years, those caps are targets. They're not even caps. This place always finds a way to get around caps. So the only thing that really mattered to me are your year one cuts. So if you're going to say I'm going to give out $4 trillion, but I'm going to cut $12 billion, that's just not enough for me. And that's really the beginning of why I was a no. Secondarily, some of the other stuff in there can be waived by the administration, and I felt that this wasn't the type of win I think our country needs from a fiscal standpoint. You could argue the semantics around a political win, but I mean, I'm not really when it comes to the debt, there are no political wins. What matters are actual economic wins, and I don't think this bill goes far enough to achieve those.
One thing that is also interesting to track is the diversity in the Republican field. It's pretty amazing. It just seems like it's pulling from all sorts of different walks of life, all different ages and backgrounds, and dare I say, skin tones. Senator Tim Scott, Larry Elder, Nikki Haley, who is a Indian American, even though she was called a white governor by fellow South Carolinian Bakari Sellers yesterday on CNN, which was kind of hilarious and dark and sad. And the Democrat side is white people only and older white people only. It seems like that's sort of their standard bearers. Do you have any reaction to this? And does America see it? Because sometimes I feel like America doesn't care, and I wish they would some days.
I think it's a great thing for our party. It really demonstrates where our party is going. This is like really akin to the first thing we talked about with the Bidens, like the media. Yeah. And that's why I don't really care to even get into the identity politics side of this.
Yeah.
Because the media doesn't care when it's Republicans. They don't care. Like, listen, we have the most black Republicans in Congress since Reconstruction. Do you think the media talks about that? No, they don't. We've elected so many Republican women the last couple of cycles. You think the media cares about that? They don't. They only care about diversity and skin tone when it suits their political interests. And that's not to speak ill of diversity. Diversity is a great thing, but this political diversity that is only rewarded when you're on the left is the stuff that's really pissing me off. So at this point, I think that for the guys and lady who are running for president, it's a great view to the country of, look, our party is diverse. It's becoming more diverse, and that's only because you have more people of various ethnic backgrounds who are now publicly supporting Republicans and being a Republican in our country. I think that continues. I don't think that goes away. The issue we have is that our media sucks, and they only reward these things if you happen to be a leftist.
Yeah, it's also noteworthy how on the right, and I can really mostly only speak for my show, but I feel like I'm not alone in this regard. If you want to get attention on a popular conservative show, for example, it's going to be ideas only. It's not going to be about diversity. Like, for example, we talk about Vivek Ramaswamy on the show all the time. And it has nothing to do with that he's an Indian American and his parents were immigrants and he's got an amazing story. His ideas are cool. And sometimes they're not cool. And we talk about those too. And I think that's what's so interesting about our side versus the left. It really is just about the pretty colors still. And it's just so boring and old. And I just hope we get past it.
I agree. Look, the stuff that they even talk about is stupid. Like, the press up here on Capitol Hill, they'll ask me questions about debt ceiling or budgets or whatever. And then they ask these weird questions. And I look at them like, who cares about that? Like, that's not even important. Like, that's not important to the people up here who are voting and making decisions. Why is that important to you? And they'll be like, oh, well, we think it's interesting. Well, that's the problem. You're worried about what's interesting instead of reporting on the actual information. And I think it's really detrimental to the political process because they would rather be caught up into this faddish clickbait foolishness. And the questions from Jake Tapper, it's like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, this is the problem. You're focused on things that people in middle America, single moms in urban corridors are not thinking about. That's the stuff you're thinking about. They're not thinking about that stuff.
Amen to that, Congressman.
We're very active. We do a lot of work, doing a lot of bills, obviously, doing a lot of stuff in the nuclear space and in the financial industry space, things that are going to really help our country grow and thrive.
Well, good. Well, we'll talk more about that next time you're here, which I hope is soon.
I'm American made. I got American parts.
That's today's show. Thanks to Zach Jones and Bill Barnett, who produced the show. Robert Marlow helps me pick topics, and thanks to all of you. We'll talk to you tomorrow.